Breaking news right now, and it is with heavy hearts that we tell you we have just learned Arizona Senator John McCain has passed away after his brave battle with brain cancer. That news coming to us just moments ago. The 81-year-old had been at his northern Arizona ranch near Sedona since last fall. McCain, of course, diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer known as glioblastoma nearly 14 months ago, which is the median survival rate for this disease. Back in April, McCain underwent surgery at the Mayo Clinic here in Phoenix related to an intestinal infection. Then just yesterday, we learned that the senator had decided to discontinue his treatment for brain cancer. McCain, of course, was more than a politician. He was a war hero, a lover of our great state of Arizona, a husband, a father, and a grandfather. And as Senator McCain himself would tell us, he was the luckiest man you would ever meet. He escaped death several times to become one of the most influential men in the entire world. And then came the devastating news that he had this brain cancer. ABC 15's Melissa Blasius now has a look back on this extraordinary life.
My friends, we have come to the end of a long journey.
John Sidney McCain III, born August 29, 1936. As a naval pilot, he narrowly escaped death in a fire aboard the USS Forrestal in 1967. That same year, his plane was shot down over Hanoi, captured by the North Vietnamese. He was tortured 5.5 years as a prisoner of war.
I know how to fight, and I know how to make peace. I know who I am and what I want to do.
Years after his release, McCain married Cindy Hensley, his second wife, in 1980. He's a father to 7 children, including a girl adopted from Mother Teresa's orphanage. After resettling in Arizona, he ran for Congress in 1982. He was called a carpetbagger, but won the House seat anyway. After 2 terms, McCain was elected to the U.S. Senate.
Please raise your right hand.
The senator was later implicated in the Keating 5 campaign contribution scandal, a low point in his career.
I am supremely confident that they will conclude that I have no improper behavior involved in this particular situation.
John McCain emerged with a new passion to reform money in politics. Called a Maverick, he bucked his Republican Party, and he worked with Democrats on campaign finance and other issues. McCain, a straight talker with a biting sense of humor.
I thank all of you for being here, trying to do the Lord's work in the city of Satan.
McCain campaigned for president twice, first in 2000.
We have sent a powerful message to Washington.
Then in 2008.
And today, I announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
That year, he won the Republican nomination. With a surprise choice of running mate, Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, McCain lost the election to Barack Obama.
Mr. President.
Then 72, McCain continued as senator and elder statesman, visiting troops overseas and digging into foreign policy. In 2016, now President Donald Trump questioned McCain's legacy.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
From his time in the POW camp, McCain had long-lasting physical problems, never again able to lift his arms fully above his head. He also had other health scares, bouts of skin cancer, leaving a large scar on his cheek.
I advise everyone wear sunscreen, I'm dead serious.
His most brutal diagnosis came in July 2017, glioblastoma, a deadly brain cancer. Less than 2 weeks after surgery to remove the tumor, McCain returned to the Senate floor to become the deciding no vote on repealing Obamacare and to give his colleagues a stern reminder of their duty to the American people.
We're getting nothing done.
John McCain, Arizona Senator, war hero, father, one of the most influential people in our country. Whether loved or hated, he never surrendered, always focused on his mission in life.
And I hope to impress on you again that it is an honor to serve the American people in your company.
A true American hero. Senator John McCain had a joke that he famously told throughout his life whenever he got upsetting news. He would say he slept like a baby because he slept 2 hours, He woke up and cried and then slept 2 more hours, woke up and cried. It was a joke, he said, after he lost the bid for the election in 2008 and in 2000. A lot of his friends told us that is something they will remember the most about him. You and I both have interviewed him before. It's that razor-sharp wit and just that warm spirit he carried with him.
You know, someone said yesterday about him, you knew he was just going to shoot straight with you. So when he was coming towards you to talk to you, you really didn't know what you were going to get, because it was the truth no matter what, and you had to be ready for it. So, you know, sometimes with a joke, sometimes he was serious, all about business, and people loved him for it.
Absolutely. It was something I think definitely set him apart from so many people. Right now, I want to go to our colleague, ABC 15's Melissa Blasius is joining us live right now in northern Arizona.
Hi, Nick and Katie. A sad day here near Cornville, Arizona, where Senator McCain has his beloved Hidden Valley Ranch. Let me tell you about how things have unfolded here in the last few hours. We saw about 2 hours ago a DPS trooper vehicle pull up just a few hundred yards down the road, followed by a second. Less than an hour ago, we saw a car come very quickly down the road and take those troopers and leave very quickly. We knew something was about to possibly be announced, and it is that Senator John McCain has passed away at age 81. We know that his family and friends have come to see him over the last few months here at his ranch. In fact, Senator Jeff Flake, Arizona's other senator, was here just yesterday. We've seen people coming and going. Some people who live in the area have come by just to drop off flowers or just be close, so they could feel like they were sending their good wishes over the hill here to where the ranch is. Of course, we are going to wait and hear about what the funeral arrangements may be. Senator McCain has been mostly here at the ranch since last December, when he stepped away from his full-time duties in Washington while still continuing to hold his Senate seat. Even then, he has been active in American politics, talking with his staff daily, we're told. In addition, he was still sending out tweets and being actively engaged in the conversation, as well as official statements, often still critical of President Donald Trump. Of course, today is a day where so many people will send their thoughts and prayers to his family, and already have been. We were in nearby Sedona earlier today, an international tourist destination, and people from all over the country, they all know Senator John McCain's name, and they all had well wishes. We even talked to some people who are going to visit a famous church up there, and they said they would light candles for him and pray for his family. Certainly a sad day for all of Arizona and the nation as we lose a great political icon, the Maverick politician, Senator John McCain. Nick, Katie?
I know so many people had already been going past the ranch out there, some people even dropping off flowers as well, so we expect that to continue throughout the evening.
Absolutely a huge loss for us. Right now, we would like to join ABC News with this special report.
He is not? No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen.
A gracious politician, even in defeat.
This campaign was and will remain the great honor of my life.
Already a cancer survivor after a bout with melanoma in 2000, McCain was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2017. True to form, McCain promised to fight and received a hero's welcome when he returned to the Senate floor just days after having brain surgery. Even as he fought his own health battles, McCain continued to call out his fellow senators over the increasingly bitter divide between the parties.
Both sides have let this happen. Let's trust each other. Let's return to regular order.
Then he cast the deciding vote on President Trump's attempt to repeal and replace Obamacare. And in November, just 2 days before Thanksgiving, he watched his daughter Megan get married. Senator John McCain, a proud father, husband, and patriot.
I've had the good fortune to spend 60 years in service to this wondrous land. It's not been perfect service, to be sure, and there were probably times when the country might have benefited a little less of my help. But I've tried to deserve the privilege as best I can, and I've been repaid 1,000 times over with adventures, with good company, with the satisfaction of serving something more important than myself, of being a bit player in the extraordinary story of America. And I am so grateful.
And Jonathan Karl joins us now on the phone. John, I know you tweeted recently about covering the campaign of John McCain in 2000. You said it was the most fun you had and the least amount of sleep. And as I watched that report just now, you think about Senator John McCain, and it's one phrase that comes to mind: he was born to serve.
He was born to serve, and that phrase that he said so many times, Tom, to dedicate yourself to a cause greater than yourself. And I have to tell you, this is a difficult, this is an emotional time for me. Personally, I feel like I grew up as a reporter covering John McCain, covering him as that Senate maverick, as the person who was a Republican. He was a conservative. He was very conservative, but he was always willing to go up against the party. He was always willing to go up against his own party. He was willing to challenge Democrats. He was willing to challenge the conventional wisdom. He was somebody who, you know, I think one of the underrated aspects of John McCain that we'll talk about as we go on over the next several days, and we should, is his fierce sense of humor. This was a guy who relished his role as somebody who he didn't care. He spent 5.5 years, Tom, as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and he decided to go into politics. He would have preferred to continue a career as a Navy pilot, but he couldn't because of what he endured, getting shot down and as a prisoner of war. He decided to go into politics, and he was a unique figure who was willing to stand up against the political powers. And that 2000 campaign, which he ended up losing to George W. Bush, but nobody thought he had a chance. And he won the New Hampshire primary by 17 points. And ended up eventually losing that nomination, winning 8 years. But that campaign, when nobody thought he had a chance, that was John McCain in his element. That was John McCain as the maverick, as somebody that was willing to challenge those that were in power, and a truly inspiring figure, a true American hero.
John, one of those things from your tweet was that photo, and you're there on that old flip phone, but you're right next to the candidate. And so many reporters sat so close to them on those long bus trips on the Straight Talk Express. What do you think it was about Senator McCain that he loved to have reporters close to him, he loved engaging with the reporters, and he wasn't at war with the press?
Tom, I got to tell you, it was phenomenal. And as a young reporter, really, this was my first full-blown experience covering a presidential campaign. To see somebody that I spent more time with John McCain in the back of that damn bus than his campaign manager, than his political director, than all of the people that usually micromanage presidential campaigns. We were back there, and by the way, Tom, it was always on the record. He invited the press in, and believe me, we sparred with him. I mean, I had a campaign event up in New Hampshire where he pointed me out and claimed that I could only speak Russian because I was a Bolshevik. I mean, he would fight with the press. And I had some tough encounters with him, but he was the most open presidential candidate that I had ever imagined seeing. And following that campaign and being with him and seeing it in real time, and truly an inspiring experience. And by the way, I covered that campaign. Some other reporters who you know well, John Dickerson, Jake Tapper, the people that covered that campaign, I think were forever affected by the time they spent with John McCain.
John Karl for us, remembering Senator John McCain and his time along that bus, the Straight Talk Express in 2000. John, stand by. For all of us who've studied, who've covered Senator John McCain, his legacy really was fighting for democracy, fighting for human rights, fighting for our troops, but also he firmly believed the U.S. had a moral role in the world, and this is something he fought his entire life for, and that's why he always tried to put country before politics. I want to play a soundbite now. This is from John McCain on the Senate floor talking to Republicans, especially Republicans who had maybe been moving to the extremes at times, and this message was for them.
Stop listening to the bombastic loudmouths on the radio and television and the internet. To hell with them. They don't want anything done for the public good. Our incapacity is their livelihood. Let's trust each other. Let's return to regular order. We've been spinning our wheels on too many important issues because we keep trying to find a way to win without help from across the aisle. That's an approach that's been employed by both sides, mandating legislation from the top down without any support from the other side, with all the parliamentary maneuvers that requires. We're getting nothing done, my friends. We're getting nothing done.
I want to bring in Terry Moran now, who's in Sedona, Arizona tonight. And Terry, you spent so many years covering Senator John McCain, both on Capitol Hill and on the campaign trail. You just heard that soundbite right there. He's appealing to people on both sides, really, to work together. He was, if anything, a patron saint of bipartisanship. And of course, I'll always remember he would go out there and make sure those bills didn't have the pork barrel spending. It was so important for him, as hard as it was, that Congress actually worked.
Oh, what a life, Tommy. And when you look at that kind of patriotism that we just heard, that we can fight, as he said, a fight that you don't join is a fight that you don't enjoy. So John McCain was no namby-pamby. He liked to get into the political trenches and slug it out in a way that was quintessentially American. And he knew it, he felt it, he lived it, where you could be a patriot, you could see that the person across in that fight from you was a patriot as well, and he was calling on his colleagues in the Senate, and from there to the country at large, which he did throughout his last months, reminding us all of who we were as the best versions of ourselves as citizens, not the worst. And I think for somebody like John McCain to see the hyper-partisanship of this age, a guy who had given so much to his country so often, was disturbing. But rather than get down about it, because I think one of the things we heard from John Carl right there, he lived with joy. He lived with verve. You know, the Vietnamese couldn't break it out of him. Nothing could, not even a presidential defeat, which is a very difficult thing for anybody to go through. And he did have doubts whether he would have a future after losing the presidency. Nothing got him down. He came back even in his last months to tell us, as we just heard, we can do better. We're still the people we've always been. He believed in this country in a way that really we don't hear so much anymore. His patriotism, the patriotism of John McCain, which he gave so much in its name, is, seems a long time ago, but is still there. That was his message to us in his closing days.
Terry, stand by for us on that point of character. I want to roll another piece of tape here. This was Senator John McCain. We saw this earlier, but I want to kind of go back to this. From a town hall meeting in Lakeville, Minnesota, October 10th, 2008. This is when he's campaigning against Barack Obama. Let's roll that clip.
I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you. Thank you.
True test of character right there. I want to bring in now our chief anchor, George Stephanopoulos. George, talk to us about that moment there and how it plays into the current era we're living in right now in politics here in this country.
Well, it shows so much about John McCain, Tom. What it shows, but remember, John McCain, he was a hero, an American hero, an American patriot. He was not a saint. John McCain was a man with a vivid temper. He got angry at Barack Obama. He was angry at Barack Obama through much of that campaign, through his early days as a senator, when he thought Barack Obama was too much of an upstart as he came into the Senate, looking beyond the Senate toward the White House. But he had a deeply rooted sense of decency and character, and he was aware of his own weaknesses and aware when he might get carried away and when he knew that he had to calm things down. And that was what we saw in that moment. He knew there were lines in politics that you couldn't cross, even when you were angry, even when you'd lost your temper, even when you were running for the highest office of the land. And he demonstrated that again, again, and again, and especially in that moment during the campaign.
And George, your thoughts on the moment, you know, he loses the nomination in 2000, he then loses the election in 2008, but he didn't go away. And that is something rare in politicians. He didn't go away. He did keep fighting.
He tested out how to fight as well. When he lost that election back in 2000, when he lost the nomination fight to George W. Bush, he was tempted to go a different direction, and something that had always appealed to him, a direction beyond party. He looked at the possibility of being an independent. He tried to bridge the parties, tried to find issues that would bring parties together. Again, after the loss in 2008, he didn't go away. He went back to the Senate and fought, and we saw him fighting up into those final moments of his life. And you know, that quintessential moment of the last year and a half when he went to the Senate well and put that thumb down on the repeal of Obamacare. Again, he was not a fan of Obamacare. He was not a fan of Barack Obama, but he did feel that at that point he couldn't follow his party and repeal what Barack Obama had passed for the American people, and he wasn't afraid to go out there on his own and say no.
George, stand by for us. I want to bring in Cokie Roberts now. Cokie, who covered Senator John McCain on Capitol Hill. She also covered those campaigns as well, and so much of what's happened in Washington. You know, we're going to talk about today a lot about Senator John McCain and how he did reach across the aisle. I want to roll another clip here. This is an incredible moment that happened on The View right here on ABC, and this is when Joe Biden was on The View, and he was talking to Meghan McCain, one of the hosts of The View, and of course, John McCain's daughter. And they had this incredible moment, this very real moment, but you could hear in Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden's voice, the type of relationship he had with Senator McCain. Let's listen.
Your son, Beau, had the same cancer that my father was diagnosed with 6 months ago, and I'm sorry.
But look, one of the things that gave Beau courage, my word, was John. Your dad, you may remember when you were a little kid, your dad took care of my Beau. Your dad, when he was a mill aide, worked with me, became friends with Beau. And Beau talked about your dad's courage, not about illness, but about his courage. And if anybody can make it, your dad, her dad is one of my best friends. Her dad goes after me, hammer and tong. We're like two brothers who were somehow raised by different fathers or something because of our points of view. But I know, and I mean this sincerely, and I've said it all, even when your dad got mad at me and said I should get the hell off the ticket. And remember what I said about your dad? I said, I know, and I mean this sincerely, I know if I picked up the phone tonight and called John McCain and said, John, I'm at Second and Vine in Oshkosh, and I need your help, come. He'd get on a plane and come. And I would for him, too. And this is the guy.
Cokie Roberts joins us now on the phone. Cokie, talk to us about that. Some of his best friends, Joe Biden there, who was on the opposite ticket, a rival so many times, and, of course, Senator Lindsey Graham as well.
And Joe Lieberman, who ended up an independent but was a Democrat. And, in fact, as John McCain was dying, Joe Biden and Joe Lieberman went out to see him, and they posted pictures of the three amigos. But, you know, John McCain, as my colleagues have said, was such a unique patriot. And, in fact, when he arrived in Congress, I was covering him then in 1982, and he was already a celebrity as a freshman congressman because of the tortures that he had endured in Vietnam, and everybody knew about that. And so they wanted to be in his presence. They wanted to be somehow surrounded by his aura. And he understood that, but he also had a sense of humor about it. because he knew that, come on, it took me being, shot down to have this kind of effect. And that sense of humor got him through a lot, because he also did have just an awful temper, and he could get very, very angry with his colleagues, with members of the press, and then he'd have to sort of come back and fix it. But in the last couple of days, Tom, I've been going back over many of the John McCain memories and the actual legislation, and the number of times that he talked about over the decades that we can't get anything done if we don't do it in a bipartisan fashion was just incredible. And it was on all kinds of things. It was on particularly issues having to do with reform. When Russ Feingold came to the Senate as a freshman, he didn't have any relationship whatsoever with John McCain. And John McCain sought him out, this freshman senator from Wisconsin, and said, let's do reform together. And then, of course, they did together the campaign finance bill, which is a singular moment of bipartisanship. And McCain always joked that people in Wisconsin thought that Russ Feingold's first name was McCain because of the name of the bill. But the truth is that his service to this country, his sacrifice for this country, his celebration of this country as the great country that it is, was something that made people, even when they disagreed with him, even when they were angry with him, made them respect and admire him.
Cokie Roberts on the life and legacy of Senator John McCain. If you are just joining us, Senator John McCain has died at the age of 81. The president has just put out a statement on the passing of Senator John McCain. We want to read it here. My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you. One of his closest friends, Senator Lindsey Graham, also tweeting, America and freedom have lost one of her greatest champions, and I've lost one of my dearest friends and mentor. That is Senator Lindsey Graham. I want to bring in Martha Raddatz now, because we are talking about a senator, we're talking about a patriot, and a man with an incredible history in the military, Martha.
Just an incredible history, Tom. At 81, we're all thinking it's far too soon for John McCain to leave us. But he never imagined he would live this long. I have to go back to 1967, and we talk about service, and we talk about sacrifice, and we talk about heroes, and I have met a lot of heroes. But when you remember what John McCain went through, it is truly extraordinary. In 1967, he was part of a 20-plane mission. He was going to hit a power plant in Hanoi. He weaved through about 15 surface-to-air missiles, and one of them hit his right wing, but he kept going. He dropped the bombs he had, releasing those bombs. He then, with the right wing sheared off, he's going towards the ground at about 400 knots. He ejected from his aircraft, and on ejection, he broke his knee. He broke both arms. He ended up in a lake. He was knocked out, sank to the bottom, but managed to wake up and push himself back up to the surface, even though his arms at that point were useless. There were angry crowds that gathered around him, and they were hitting him with rifle butts. And, of course, after that, he was a prisoner of war for those 5.5 years, really tortured, beaten, just an extraordinary story of courage and resolve to get through that and to get back home.
Point where he said at one point he almost wanted to commit suicide because it was that bad, and those scars, those injuries would last a lifetime. He wasn't able to lift his arms ever again. And Martha, I know you had a moment with him at the Vietnam Memorial in D.C. Talk to me about that, and then we'll play that clip.
Last September, after he had been diagnosed with brain cancer, Ken Burns, who did the marvelous documentaries about the Vietnam War, we had a panel at the Kennedy Center, and John McCain was there, John Kerry, Ken Burns, Chuck Hagel, all of these Vietnam veterans gathered together with Ken Burns to talk about their experiences, to talk about what they did in the Vietnam War. Of course, John McCain was very humble. But I asked him about how often he went to the Vietnam War Memorial.
Let's roll that clip.
I want to ask you specifically how often you go to the wall.
Depends on the weather. Sometimes once a week, sometimes once every couple of weeks. I live not far away, and I try sometimes to go.
What's it
early,
like for you there?
Very early in the morning, or when it's near sunset. And not only do I enjoy the wall, but I enjoy shaking hands with the veterans who were there, it's really an incredibly emotional experience. And again, what it tells me, a lot of these young men died because of an inadequate or corrupt leadership. We have got to have leaders who will lead and will be able to give them a path to victory so that we will not sacrifice them ever again in a lost cause.
And Martha, it's so incredible because he ended up...
How emotional it must be for someone like John McCain to be at that wall. And that war shaped the man he became, shaped the politician he would become, shaped his view of foreign policy. He knew sacrifice. He knew service.
And his story with Vietnam didn't end there, Martha, because he even ended up working with Senator John Kerry, who later famously said a protester and a POW coming together to help open the door and work again with Vietnam later on in his life.
Exactly, and they have talked about that a lot. They became friends. It was difficult at first for John McCain to imagine going back to Vietnam and to reestablishing relationships in Vietnam or relations with Vietnam, but he did it, and they worked together beautifully on that.
Martha Raddatz for us tonight. Martha, thank you. Cindy McCain, the wife of Senator John McCain, has just put out a tweet. We want to read it now and put it up on the screen for you. She writes, "My heart is broken. I am so lucky to have lived the adventure of loving this incredible man for 38 years. He passed the way he lived on his own terms, surrounded by the people he loved in the place he loved best." I want to go now to one of his close friends in the Senate, New Hampshire Senator Kelly Ayotte. Senator Ayotte, your thoughts tonight on the passing of Senator McCain?
Yes.
Senator Ayotte, can we get your thoughts on the passing of your colleague and friend, Senator McCain?
Well, I'm just so sad to lose such a dear friend and someone who's been a tremendous mentor to me and so many others. But what a loss for not only his family and friends, but for the country. Just an incredible person. You know his courage, his integrity, his character, but, you know, his sense of humor. He had just an incredible way of, self-deprecating, always making a joke, but also just what a leader. I mean, I had the privilege, I heard you talking about his Vietnam, and I had the privilege of traveling with him to Vietnam and to Hanoi, and you should have seen the reception that he got in Vietnam, years after, obviously, the sacrifice that he made as a POW there for our country, but the way that he was treated as someone who obviously was one of the first members of Congress to ask for normalization of relationships after everything that he went through there in Vietnam. I traveled in war zones with John, and he is, he was someone who, if there was a troop, a member of our military anywhere, John was going to go and visit them and support them and make sure that no matter how dangerous, that he would go and travel there and make sure they had what they needed. And just an extraordinary legacy that John McCain leaves. And I'm just, my prayers go to Cindy and his family. He has such a wonderful family.
And I want to talk about the family, Senator Ayotte. We're going to play a clip in a little bit of Senator John McCain on The View. But I want to ask you, he had 7 children, 5 grandchildren. Talk to me about Senator John McCain, the father and the grandfather.
Oh, well, John was so proud of his sons and their service. I mean, this is a family who the entire family served. You know, obviously, about his father's and his grandfather's service, but the tradition and the legacy of service and his sons have continued. And Cindy serves. Cindy is someone who has devoted herself to helping victims of trafficking around the world. And one of the things that struck me about John is that he stood up around the world for people's basic dignity and human rights, and he was there for the little guy, he was there for anyone who was oppressed, and he really just stood for the best of our country, not just in our country, but wherever he traveled around the world.
Senator Ayotte, we appreciate you for your time. This clip was one of the last times Senator John McCain was on The View with his daughter and our colleague, Meghan McCain. Let's take a look.
A picture of Meghan and her old man. And
this is, we hiked in Sedona, but we were home, and I'm sorry, and it's really special on the top of the mountain, and I love you so much.
Meghan, what is the biggest lesson you've learned from your dad? Because you tell us so much about him.
That character matters, and that believing in something greater than yourself will always be important, and to really respect and love America and the people who sacrifice for us, and that America has always been great. It is always going to be great, and I'm the luckiest person in the entire world. I mean, we are such a family that's filled with blessings, and we have such a bond and such a love, and I'm so grateful for that. A lot of people don't have that with their parents.
Exactly. That's right.
Our colleague Meghan McCain, and tonight she has also put out a tweet remembering her father and a statement as well. We want to read a portion of that right now if we can put up the tweet from Meghan McCain. She writes, "My father, United States Senator John Sidney McCain III, departed this life today. I was with my father at his end, and he was with me at my beginning. In the 33 years we shared together, he raised me, taught me, corrected me, comforted me, encouraged me, and supported me in all things. He loved me, and I loved him. He taught me how to live, his love and his care ever present, always unfailing, took me from a girl to a woman, and he showed me what it is to be a man." That's just part of what Meghan McCain has said tonight, remembering her father. I want to bring in Cecilia Vega now, who covers the White House for us. And Cecilia, the president has already weighed in, but the two men, Senator John McCain and the president, have had a very complicated and a very fractured relationship.
In a very public one, Tom. You know, the president has not hidden his dislike for John McCain, and frankly, John McCain didn't hide his dislike for this president either. This is a history that goes back many years, and in fact, there are reports in recent weeks and months that President Trump has reportedly not been invited to this funeral for John McCain that will come in days. We assume that, in fact, Vice President Pence has been the one who will attend for this administration. You know, it goes back after that Access Hollywood video surfaced of President Trump talking about women and what he called locker room talk. John McCain said that he would not be voting for Donald Trump, and that was a huge move for a Republican like John McCain to distance himself from a Republican candidate like that. And really the pinnacle of this, of course, all remember during the campaign when Donald Trump said that John McCain was not a war hero, despite, of course, his more than 5 years as a prisoner of war. And Donald Trump said that he wasn't a war hero because he was captured and we remember those words. He said, Donald Trump, that I like war heroes who aren't captured. And more recently, John McCain, who very vocally, publicly criticized Donald Trump's performance in Helsinki when he stood next to Vladimir Putin. John McCain called that a disgrace to the president. He said he'd never seen anything like that. And before that, he had said that Donald Trump very much fired up the crazies in his party. This was a White House and a president, frankly, that was frustrated by John McCain, someone who voted against the appeal, as George said, of Obamacare, that famous thumbs down vote in the middle of the night
And the president really never let that go. And John McCain never let what he felt was just an injustice coming from this White House in terms of tone and tenor. And in his recent memoir, John McCain, I'm struck by words recently that I was rereading again when he said, "I'm not sure what to make of President Trump's convictions." You know, I think we will look back on John McCain in his passing as someone who represents perhaps a bygone era of politics in Washington now, Tom.
Cecilia Vegas for us tonight. Cecilia, thank you so much. Speaking of a memoir, we do have John McCain in his own words speaking about his place in history. Let's roll that clip.
I made a small place for myself in the story of America and the history of my times. The bell tolls for me. I knew it would. I hope those who mourn my passing, and even those who don't, will celebrate, as I celebrate, a happy life, lived in imperfect service to a country made of ideals whose continued success is the hope of the world. And I wish all of you great adventures, good company, and lives as lucky as mine.
Ron Claiborne covered the Senator John McCain campaign, correct?
2008, yeah. 14 months.
What was that like? Because it was a historic campaign. He was running against Senator Barack Obama at the time, two senators going at it.
Well, Tom, I actually joined the campaign, the McCain campaign, when he was deep in 6th or 7th place among the Republicans back in the fall of 2007. He was basically out of it, and you had great access to him. He had nothing to lose, in effect, because he really didn't think he had a chance to win. He was staking everything on winning the primary in New Hampshire. You could get up close, sit with him, talk to him about anything all day, riding around on his bus. Listen, you talked about, we've heard a lot about him being a hero and a patriot. He was a good guy. He was a fun guy to be around. Don't make no mistake about it. He had a hot temper, and it could turn very quickly. But great raconteur, funny stories, and just a wonderful person to spend a lot of time with. And I spent a lot of time with him.
Ron Claiborne for us. We have David Wright on the phone, too, who also covers Senator John McCain, both on the Capitol Hill and on the campaign trails. Well, David, your thoughts tonight on the passing of this historical figure in our lives?
Well, Tom, two moments stand out from that campaign. One was the selection of Sarah Palin as his running mate, a huge surprise, and one that McCain later came to express regret over because I think he felt that he opened the door to the reality show era in American politics, and he didn't like where it led to. The other, I was there that night in Lakeville, Minnesota, and that moment just a few weeks before Election Day when he said, no, you don't have to be scared of Barack Obama. I may disagree with him on the issues, but he's perfectly capable of being a good president, and we need to honor that. That was a very powerful moment. The first time I interviewed him was actually back in 2000 when I was a local reporter, and the cameraman that I was working with, a guy named Jeff Pierce, was a Vietnam vet. And after the interview, they got to chatting about Vietnam and about deployments and units, and they quickly determined, where they both fit in there. And McCain turned to him at the end of that and said, "Welcome home." It was a really powerful moment.
David Wright for us tonight. David, thank you. I want to go back to Terry Moran right now, who's in Sedona, Arizona, who's been covering sort of some of the services that have been happening since they released that statement. And Terry, you've talked to supporters of Senator John McCain. You've been out there. Some final thoughts as we wrap up.
You know, there's two things that come to mind listening to all of my colleagues and looking at those magnificent pictures. One, a life lesson, one, a country lesson. The life lesson, resilience. Think of how much John McCain went through and how often he came back. When he went to war, he had a baby who was 1 year old. When he came back, she was 6. She didn't recognize him. She was scared when he hugged her. And he went through that and came out on the other end positive about life. He then he had a great political career, and the country lesson is the thing he was trying to teach us in his last year, and that's we don't have to be this way. We don't have to hate on each other as much. And in that clip where he talks to the woman who says she thinks Barack Obama's an Arab and she's scared of it, the thing that is also impressive is the way he addresses her with respect. He says, "No, ma'am. No, ma'am." Today, you can imagine on lots of different kinds of shows and on social media, somebody would scream at that woman or insult her. And he was polite and then corrected her in the patriotism that he lived. And I think those life lessons, resilience as a person, resilience for the country, are part of his legacy.
A moment that stands out for so many. Terry Moran for us tonight. Terry, thank you. And over the next week, there will be many events to commemorate his life, beginning in Arizona, where he'll lie in state, and then to Washington, D.C., where he will lie in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. From there, his motorcade will make a stop at the Vietnam War Memorial, the Wall of Remembrance that meant so much to him. A memorial service will then be held at the National Cathedral before traveling to his final resting place at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And in his memoir, McCain described what he had hoped his final moments would look like, including his desire to be buried next to his fellow midshipmen from the Academy.
Then I'd like to go back to our valley and see the creek run after the rain and hear the cottonwoods whisper in the wind. I want to smell the rose-scented breeze and feel the sun on my shoulders. I want to watch the hawks hunt from the sycamore. And then take my leave, bound for a place near my old friend Chuck Larson in the cemetery on the Severn, back where it began.
Senator John McCain, a proud father, husband, and patriot, has died at the age of 81. We're going to return now to our regular programming. Our coverage of the life of John McCain continues right now on abcnews.com, and there will be much more later tonight on a special edition of 2020 at 10 o'clock. I'm Tom Yamas. Have a great night.
And if you are just joining us right now, we are staying on top of that breaking news, that sad news, that Arizona Senator, war hero, proud father, and patriot John McCain has passed away at the age of 81.
Yeah, so many ways to describe him as we're reflecting on his life this afternoon. POW, Maverick, senator, friend to so many in the Valley and across the U.S. We want to right away bring in Stan Barnes, who has been so gracious to wait on the phone line with us as we went to ABC News for coverage. Stan, your thoughts on his passing and your memories of him?
Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed to be talking about it because there's a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people that could step in and do this at this very moment. He had such a profound impact on people like myself that were in the public arena with him. I was elected to the legislature when I was a very young man. He took me under his wing. That was 1988. And I was his ally, and he was my political mentor ever since. And to stand with him, to stand next to him on a national stage in New Hampshire in the year 2000, as he announced for President of the United States, was such a thrill for me. And as I battle in political things, as I think about the natural ebb and flow of all of our lives, John McCain has been there for the entirety of it. There's nobody in Arizona today in politics that doesn't know a life without John McCain in it. He has been this rock for all. I mean, let's just speak honestly, as he would have us speak honestly. He's not loved by everybody. But he was loved by many for his personal courage, his personal story, and the way he treated everyone, not just kings, but cabbage, not just the high and mighty, but regular people as someone he cared about authentically. So it's a real blessing to be able to say a few words about him, and I express the same sadness we're all feeling that a genuine Arizona giant has passed.
A giant, I think, is a perfect way to describe him. Stan, I want to ask you this. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been in the arena of politics for decades now. What do you think set Senator John McCain apart from so many others?
You know, the thing that I've come to admire over time in politics is authenticity. And I learned quickly that you just don't agree with everyone all the time. Just ask anybody who's married. You don't agree with everyone all the time. But John McCain gave off an authenticity, and in fact was an authentic actor in a very difficult political environment. And that I value that. That's, I think, among the highest items on the scale. There's all kinds of political people, and some of them are incredibly phony. And John McCain consistently, from the day he knocked on my mother's front door in 1982, when he ran for Congress and knocked on my mom's door in Chandler, Arizona, up until this moment, was an authentic actor in a very difficult circumstance of the public square. And that's the beauty of him, is he was who he was. And the great lesson for me as a guy in politics is to be who you are and let the rocks be thrown and let the roses be laid at your feet. This is what John McCain taught all of us that were at his tutelage, that were newer and younger than he as we came up in the political ranks. Just be honest with yourself and let the chips fall. That was his big gift to all of us.
You know, Stan, we meet so many people in this business, so many larger-than-life figures, and how would you describe his personality? How will you remember his personality? His personality alone is one that is almost indescribable. I find it so interesting to listen to everybody try to describe his personality because it was so dynamic. How did you see it?
That's right. It was the kind of thing where within 30 seconds you felt like you were having a genuine conversation.
Yes.
and not a political dance or some sort of theatrics or some sort of phony cocktail party banter. But you, within 30 seconds of being with him, you felt like you were in his office, his feet were up on the desk, the Diamondbacks are on the television set, and you're talking about whether or not they're going to make the playoffs and how screwed up Washington is and how someday we got to fix all this mess. It's just a beautiful thing to think about.
Yeah, like no other, that's for certain. Stan, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your memories. I know you spent a lot of time with him, worked on his campaign as well, so we appreciate your look back at this.
You bet.
Stan, thank you. Right now, I want to go to our colleague, ABC 15's Melissa Blasius right now, who is in Cornville right now, outside of McCain's home. You have been there for us all day, Melissa. If you can, set the scene for us. What are you seeing?
Well, just a few minutes ago, we saw a motorcade pull up here and go up the long dirt road to the McCain family ranch. The first vehicle on its way up was a hearse, followed by a number of black SUVs, presumably to carry the family as they leave from here with the senator at some point. A sad day. In fact, it's gloomy, and it's started to rain here now. That is the mood here, as many people are shedding tears for Arizona Senator John McCain. But I have to tell you, yesterday, the sunset was probably the most beautiful sunset I have ever seen in Arizona, standing on this spot. And that, I think, is our state's goodbye to him. I have talked to a number of McCain's close friends and political allies over the last few days, just most recently to Senator John McCain, former Arizona Senator, John Kyle on the phone just a few minutes before McCain's death. When I spoke to him, he said that he had been on Capitol Hill numerous times over the last few months, and whenever he saw Republican or Democrat, they'd always ask how Senator McCain was doing, and they'd all share a story, because if you've ever met John McCain, you have a story about that day that you met him. And he said that they all said that they would miss him very much. Senator Kyle also mentioned how much he cared for the environment, as well as how well Senator McCain served the people of Arizona. I also talked to a longtime campaign worker. We've been trading messages, Kurt Davis. He says that even when the most important people in the world are talking to and about John McCain, it is the most regular people that he was thinking about. He was never too busy for a photo or a handshake or a chat with a normal, regular Joe. He shook the hands of many presidents and kings, but still loved that contact with people, and he was so connected to our community. We heard about what a great sports fan he was. Many friends say he'd call him middle of the night in Washington just to talk about the Diamondbacks game. Back to you guys.
Yeah, really a staple at a lot of those games, a forever fan, that's for sure. Melissa, thank you. Steve Irvin joining us now. We're also just getting some word on the arrangements that have made. How lucky to have the opportunity to decide what you would like your ending to look like. He wanted to spend time up in Sedona. There were certain wishes that he had that he was able to meet and be surrounded by his family.
And he had very specific requirements for his funeral service, we know, as well. And we know that service is expected to be held at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And the New York Times has previously reported McCain's close inner circle of friends has communicated to the White House that McCain does not want President Trump to attend his funeral. He would prefer Vice President Mike Pence to be there instead. Pence offering his condolences just a short time ago on Twitter. Former Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush are among those expected to deliver eulogies there. And in his memoir, The Restless Wave, McCain says he wants to be buried at the Naval Academy Cemetery in Annapolis, Maryland, near his friend Charles Larson. Larson and McCain were lifelong friends, and their friendship started when they both attended the Naval Academy in the 1950s. Larson died of leukemia back in 2014. And over the past few months, McCain has had several visitors to his home, including former Vice President Joe Biden and former Democratic Senator Joe Lieberman. So far, plans for his services have not been released. We don't know when they will happen. But, of course, as soon as we get that information, we will pass it along to you.
We know, of course, first of all, he will lie in state here in Arizona and then lie in state at the U.S. Capitol as well. So as soon as we hear the details on that, of course, we will pass it along to all of you. Nick Saletti has transitioned over to tracking some of the response coming in from all around the world at this point. He's being remembered, Nick.
Katie, Steve, absolutely. You think of Senator McCain, and you know he was just such a monumental figure. So you can just imagine how many people right now are showing their condolences and sending their thoughts and prayers to the McCain family and, of course, his many, many loved ones. So I want to get right into it right now. This is actually from Cindy McCain, of course, his wife for many, many years. She says, "My heart is broken. I am so lucky to have lived the adventure of loving this incredible man for 38 years. He passed away the way he lived, on his own terms, surrounded by the people he loved and the place he loved best." And I picked this one because I think it's just so telling of Senator McCain's love and loyalty and respect and devotion for the state of Arizona. And we see that in so many ways in talking about the plans that he wanted for the way he was going to be remembered in simple ways, and just his love for the Coyotes and the D-backs and Larry Fitzgerald and the Cardinals, and just so supportive of our state in so many ways. I just want to, if we can, pan through and show you some more responses we're getting right now. This is actually a statement we're just getting in from Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. It says, "John McCain is one American who will never be forgotten." I'm going to skip through a little bit. It says, "Angela and I join all Arizonans in praying for Cindy and the entire McCain family during this difficult time and offering our full support." He closes here, "May his life and legacy continue to inspire us to build a future for this country and a history for this country that would make John McCain proud." And of course, above anything else, John McCain, of course, so many things: a POW, a war hero, a proud father, a proud son, but a proud patriot, I think, is the most fitting way to describe John McCain. He was a patriot who absolutely loved this country. Also getting statements today from former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, former First Lady. "John McCain and I were members of different generations, came from completely different backgrounds, and competed at the highest level of politics, but we shared, for all of our differences, a fidelity to something higher. The ideals for which generations of Americans and immigrants alike have fought, marched, and sacrificed. We saw our political battles even as a privilege, something noble, an opportunity to serve as stewards of those high ideals at home and to advance them around the world. We saw this country as a place where anything is possible, and citizenship as our patriotic obligation to ensure it forever remains that way." And that's just part of that statement, again, coming from former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. Also, in talking about the funeral arrangements and memorials for Senator McCain, we're hearing that President Obama is going to be one of the people delivering a eulogy. And I think that's just so telling of Senator McCain and his character, and from people who were, by all intents and purposes, political opponents, putting all of that aside and having respect for the human being that Senator John McCain was, and he recognizing that too in President Obama. And I think just very telling of Senator McCain's character, guys.
Yeah, it was interesting. McCain and Obama had a very interesting relationship because it was probably the most bitter defeat of his political career, losing after he'd been the Republican nominee in 2008. At the same time, Obama would often consult McCain, invite invite him to the White House. They would talk about various different issues, and then the senator would often turn around on the Senate floor and oppose President Obama on a number of things, including the Affordable Care Act, including many of his foreign policy decisions, in his treatment of the military. And so they were, in essence, political enemies, but at the same time had a relationship and had a fondness for one another because they shared the goal of making the Republic a better place.
Yeah, and a civil relationship at that, one where, with civility, that they could discuss these issues in a calm way. And boy, looking at how things have changed now, wow.
Yeah.
It's just incredible to look back on that sort of relationship, and both senators running for that office as well at that time. Fascinating.
You look at Governor Ducey's reaction to this as well, and one of the lines that he uses is that John McCain was above partisanship, and a lot of people say that made him one of the most powerful men in the Senate because he could occupy the middle, he could reach out across the aisle, and he could get things done. And it was done in the spirit of not winning, having your side win or their side win. McCain has talked about this. It was done in the spirit of, in some cases, as McCain put it, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We got something done.
Yeah.
Nobody won,
right,
but we moved this issue forward. We did something. We accomplished something. And those are some of the words that I think ring in my ears when I think about his last message and his last speech on the Senate floor, is that we're not getting anything done, guys, because we're so polarized and we're treated to our corners. Nobody cares about actually accomplishing anything. They only care about winning.
Yeah, it has become a circus instead of moving forward, accomplishing things, discussing things. You know, and we got such insight with his look-backs and his books and his memoirs. And in fact, Senator John McCain's recent book, The Restless Wave, his memoir, it was just released earlier this summer in May. The man, many called him Maverick. He was pushing for change in American politics, as we have discussed. And he also acknowledged the people and the places that inspired him in that book, including his adopted home state, our home state of Arizona. ABC 15's Melissa Blasius has more on this lasting message.
The Restless Wave, a fitting name for the book and the man.
He's been restless his whole life. It's all the more remarkable that he could spend 5.5 years in a prison camp, given that he can't spend 5.5 minutes just sitting around. He's always about the actions.
He's tenacious. He enjoys it. He enjoys the fight, and he's got this huge sense of intellectual curiosity.
Senator John McCain's new memoir, a must-read for many Arizonans.
Yeah, we need leaders like him right now, and we just need to take his wisdom as we get it.
McCain's reoccurring theme that just not Americans, but all people have a right to be free and pursue their vision of happiness.
John's fought for that his whole life, and he believes our country has to fight for that and stand for that. And that means we have to get involved. We can't just sit back and take care only of ourselves.
There's also an impassioned plea for more political decorum and less divisiveness.
We are a boisterous bunch here in the United States, and we bicker and we fight and we make arguments, and we should. But at the end of the day, we're all Americans.
The memoir also a chance for Senator McCain to write his own eulogy.
He says right there, I may not be here when the book comes out. You know, that was a very real possibility. We don't know. I mean, this is out of our hands. But it was hard to hear.
In Phoenix, Melissa Blasius, ABC 15, Arizona.
You know, it's interesting. McCain also explains how Arizona has enchanted and claimed him. He admired the hardworking, self-starting dreamers, and he gets nostalgic in the book about cottonwoods whispering in the wind and other just really simple, tangible pleasures that he was describing around his ranch near Sedona.
Yeah, that ranch, really his favorite place in the entire country, and he would invite all kinds of people. Often when he had people that might oppose him on something, even
come to have a conversation.
There were even members of the media who went up there. When I remember when he was starting his 2008 presidential campaign, he invited all of the people who would be covering the campaign in for a barbecue, which was politically a very smart thing to do. But at the same time, it was an atmosphere where he could sit down and just talk turkey with you without having all of the trappings of Capitol Hill and Washington and all the partisanship there. You can just sit down, have a beer, and talk about it.
Exactly. Jay Heiler is joining us on the phone. Jay, thank you for joining us. I know you were a friend of John McCain's. What are your thoughts in this hour?
Well, the senator had a great many friends, and he lived a very, very remarkable and historic life, and he will leave a void behind in the United States Senate where his expertise on national defense and geopolitics will be very, very difficult to replace. And he will live long in the memories of Arizonans. He has represented this state in the House and then in the Senate since the early 80s, which is a significant portion of the entire life of Arizona as a state. And it will take a long time for everyone to really process everything that John McCain has meant and everything that he has been through in his public life, even after his military life.
Jay, given the political landscape that we see today, do you think there will ever be anyone like John McCain, somebody who, I don't know that the man knew the meaning of the word talking point. He gave honest answers to questions and spoke his mind, even if it wasn't necessarily the politically correct thing to do or the expedient thing to do at the time. Given the landscape that we have now, will we ever see anybody who serves quite in the same way?
Well, you certainly won't see many, and you'll never see any who come from exactly the same experience and background and the same suffering, really. And so, I think Senator McCain had a certain liberty in public life that many politicians don't feel because of who he was and what he had been through. And when you are literally and figuratively covered with scar tissue, you come into the public arena with a completely different mentality than most of those you find there. And so I just think that he had a very unique perspective. He had a unique set of talents and insights that were pretty much singular to him and his experience. And so, yeah, your question is a very good one, and I think the answer is that there probably won't be anybody that's very much like John McCain.
What memories will you hold closest to your heart about your time knowing him?
Well, I knew him mostly in his public life. You know, I got to spend some amount of time with the senator privately, and the times I did spend with him in conversation, I was truly overwhelmed at his depth of knowledge about geopolitics and defense, and in a way that you seldom find yourself feeling when you're talking to an elected official about something. He truly was a deep subject matter expert on those things, whether you agreed with his judgments on anything, any issue of the moment was another matter, but his knowledge simply was unsurpassed. And so I will remember that, and then I will remember him for what he suffered. I will remember him for the way he carried himself after an ordeal that many people would not have survived, and if they survived it, they wouldn't have gone on with much spirit. And whatever anyone thinks of John McCain, he must be honored for having been a great warrior for his country, for having suffered greatly in that walk, and then having carried himself with such energy and determination for so many years after that. And he was an exemplar of the virtue of courage in American life, and he should be honored for that, regardless of political party or judgment about any passing issue.
I mean, just alone to be a POW for more than 5 years, can't even imagine what you go through, and then how you can have a sense of humor and be the fun guy that he could be. It's incredible.
And McCain readily admitted that at one point during that period of time, he was at his breaking point, and he contemplated suicide, and he was willing to give up. I mean, this was at a time when he was being tortured every 2 hours for weeks at a time. Jay, do you think that he's getting the sort of recognition that he deserves? Because it's not hard to find today that there are people, even in this hour, disparaging his memory and his service.
Well, we live in a time when people have a very difficult time putting aside politics for anything. It's become a false god, almost, on all sides of the political divide. And when someone like Senator McCain passes, that's when we need to remember that politics has its limits, and regardless of what anybody believed about this or that issue, or how Senator McCain positioned himself on this or that issue, he transcended politics. Like I said before, he was an exemplar of courage in American life, and he just happened to be in a political theater while he was setting that example and showing that to the world. And I think that's what he should be remembered for. You know, he was truly a towering figure in showing that virtue to the world. And so, you know, I think that's really much more important than politics. And people who don't know the senator and have just had political differences with him, I think to the extent that they're good people, and there are many, many such people, they will reflect on his life and credit him for having been a great warrior of tremendous courage who stood in the breach to defend our country and did so with incredible endurance.
Absolutely an incredible life. Jay Heiler, thank you so much for taking time with us in Senator McCain's memory here this afternoon. We're coming up on the 6:30 half hour at this point. Losing Senator John McCain at about 4:28 p.m., passing away at his Sedona ranch here in Arizona.
This comes, of course, just a day after the senator and his family announced that he would not be seeking any additional treatment for his brain cancer. And so we all knew that the time was near. We didn't know when exactly, but by all accounts, he passed away surrounded by family and friends in the place that he loved most in this state. And as we see some of the video coming in from Sedona, that certainly makes it clear that they are preparing now for funeral arrangements. Senator McCain's body will lie in state here in the state of Arizona before eventually he will be buried at the cemetery in Annapolis, Maryland, at the Naval Academy there after a service at the National Cathedral in Washington.
Near his midshipmen. And as McCain would tell you, he is the luckiest guy, and he wished everyone to have lives as lucky as mine, he said in his book, A Man of Service. He escaped death several times, become one of the most influential men in the entire world, really. And then the news last summer, we learned that he had brain cancer. ABC 15's Melissa Blasius has a look back on just absolutely an extraordinary life.
My friends, we have come to the end of a long journey.
John Sidney McCain III, born August 29, 1936. As a naval pilot, he narrowly escaped death in a fire aboard the USS Forrestal in 1967. That same year, his plane was shot down over Hanoi, captured by the North Vietnamese. He was tortured 5.5 years as a prisoner of war.
I know how to fight, and I know how to make peace. I know who I am and what I want to do.
Years after his release, McCain married Cindy Hensley, his second wife, in 1980. He's a father to 7 children, including a girl adopted from Mother Teresa's orphanage. After resettling in Arizona, he ran for Congress in 1982. He was called a carpetbagger, but won the House seat anyway. After 2 terms, McCain was elected to the U.S. Senate.
Please raise your right hand.
The senator was later implicated in the Keating 5 campaign contribution scandal, a low point in his career.
I am supremely confident that they will conclude that I have no improper behavior involved in this particular situation.
John McCain emerged with a new passion to reform money in politics. Called a Maverick, he bucked his Republican Party, and he worked with Democrats on campaign finance and other issues. McCain, a straight talker with a biting sense of humor.
I thank all of you for being here, trying to do the Lord's work in the city of Satan.
McCain campaigned for president twice, first in 2000.
We have sent a powerful message to Washington.
Then in 2008.
And today, I announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
That year, he won the Republican nomination. With a surprise choice of running mate, Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, McCain lost the election to Barack Obama.
Mr. President.
Then 72, McCain continued as senator and elder statesman, visiting troops overseas and digging into foreign policy. In 2016, now President Donald Trump questioned McCain's legacy.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
From his time in the POW camp, McCain had long-lasting physical problems, never again able to lift his arms fully above his head. He also had other health scares, bouts of skin cancer, leaving a large scar on his cheek.
I advise everyone, wear sunscreen, wear sunscreen. I'm dead serious.
His most brutal diagnosis came in July 2017, glioblastoma, a deadly brain cancer. Less than 2 weeks after surgery to remove the tumor, McCain returned to the Senate floor to become the deciding no vote on repealing Obamacare and to give his colleagues a stern reminder of their duty to the American people.
We're getting nothing done.
John McCain, Arizona senator, war hero, father, one of the most influential people in our country. Whether loved or hated, he never surrendered, always focused on his mission in life.
And I hope to impress on you again that it is an honor to serve the American people in your company.
And we're remembering Senator John McCain. He had a joke he famously told throughout life whenever he got upsetting news, and we've been talking about this, that he slept like a baby. He slept 2 hours, he woke up and he cried, and then he slept 2 more hours, and then he woke up and he cried. And a lot of friends have told us that they're going to remember his wit. They'll be remembering that about him. Such an interesting personality. I know you and I would be in the studio and he would come in. You would never kind of really know what to expect, because he could be in a great mood joking around. He would be telling me where I should travel in Costa Rica. He would tell me, you know, Cindy would like those shoes. You got to tell me where I got them. And then he could jump right into the politics of whatever we were there to talk about. And it was a little bit unpredictable. You for a moment you just didn't know what you were going to get.
There was a wisecrack, always a wisecrack, and then it was usually right down to business, and then it was
right
off,
on topic.
Because he never stopped moving and never stopped going. The handful of times that I interviewed him, he was rushing in and throwing on the microphone and like, come on, let's get to it, let's do it, because 5 minutes later he had to be somewhere else and doing that. I remember a story I like to tell is that right after the 2008 campaign, you would think after a grueling presidential campaign
that he'd be tired.
That he'd be tired, he'd want to take a little time off, and his staffers said he came back to work the next day and just kept going and didn't take a day off. And it's remarkable when you consider that this was somebody who didn't have to do any of this. He had proven himself as in service to his country for years and years, and yet he always felt that there was more to accomplish. And that's truly remarkable and really a telling of the man's character and his faith for this country.
And feeling a sense of duty to be there and to show up. Let's check in with Aldo Vasquez. He's over at McCain's office in Phoenix. Aldo?
Yeah, good evening, Katie. As the news of Senator McCain's passing continues to spread around the world, I'm out here in front of the senator's office near Camelback and 22nd Street. Now, we're told by security here that if people want to come down and drop off flowers and help honor and remember his legacy, they can do so by coming out here in front of the building. It's still pretty quiet out here since the news of his passing, and we haven't seen anybody from McCain's office just yet, but I will continue to be out here through the rest of the evening as we continue our coverage of the passing of Senator John McCain. For now, reporting live in Phoenix, Aldo Vasquez, ABC 15, Arizona.
Thanks so much, Aldo. The White House lowering flags to half staff tonight. I don't have any word on whether the president has weighed in. I know the vice president did a little bit earlier, just offering his condolences to the McCain family. There's been a lot of speculation as to whether President Trump would weigh in, because obviously the two feuded for months and months.
Yeah, and there was one tweet that came out. We can get that pulled up as well from President Trump. Also, the Diamondbacks releasing a statement. I know, Nick, you're pulling up some of those items right now for us. I just posted the Diamondback statement to my Facebook page. He was such an avid fan, was there so often. Let's get to the tweet from Donald Trump first. Nick?
That's right, Katie, Steve. Actually, just about 10-15 minutes ago, President Donald Trump weighing in on the passing of Senator John McCain, saying, quote, "My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and our prayers are with you." And as Steve had mentioned, of course, there was a lot of talk about what exactly the president would say. At times, the two had an adversarial relationship. More condolences coming in, though, right now. Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, of course, a very, very dear, close friend of Senator John McCain, saying, "I will need some time to absorb this, but I want Cindy and the entire McCain family to know that they are in my prayers tonight." And he sent out a series of tweets, but that was one of them that he put out. We also, of course, read earlier a statement from President Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, the governor also chiming in, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. And we also, I'm going to move back up a little bit and show you this, because we know also a lighter side of Senator McCain, and he, of course, was a very, very avid, loyal, devoted Arizona sports fan, whether it was the Cardinals, the Coyotes, the D-backs, whoever. He loved Arizona sports. So I'm going to move up a little bit and show you this. Michael Bidwell, so of course the president of the Cardinals, talking about Senator McCain. I'm just going to pull this up. It says, Arizona and the United States and the world will never be the same without the voice of Senator John McCain. We are heartbroken by his passing, but know that the character, the courage and conviction, the conviction that he demonstrated throughout his life will endure forever. All of us at the Arizona Cardinals extend our deepest condolences to his wife, Cindy, and their entire family. The world was a better place with Senator John McCain in it, and we all mourn his loss tonight, which I think beautifully just sums up the sentiment that all of us are feeling right now, not just here in the Valley and across the state, across the nation, and really across the world. And also something interesting of note that's just coming in. We're hearing that Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer from New York, who's the Senate Minority Leader right now and has long served with Senator John McCain, is now going to introduce a resolution to name one of the Senate office buildings after Senator John McCain. And I think this is just very telling of Senator McCain, the Maverick, as so many people knew him as. A lot of folks also knew him as someone who was definitely willing to reach across the aisle and not afraid of compromise, not afraid to work together. And I think that is clearly demonstrated through Senator Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, pushing now to get a Senate office building named after Senator McCain. A very fitting tribute for an American hero, a patriot, and a loyal friend, guys.
Yeah, I imagine we'll see so many different tributes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nick. We want to check in with Melissa Blasey, as she's been up in Sedona for us all weekend. Melissa?
Yeah, that's right. Now, you can't see the McCain family ranch at Hidden Valley from here. It is down this very long, windy dirt road, but we continue to see cars arrive here. About 45 minutes ago, we saw a hearse and several big SUVs head up the road to the home as part of a motorcade. At this point, we have several state troopers also waiting here to escort the motorcade to where they will go next. John Sidney McCain was 81 years old. His 82nd birthday would have been next week. We know that he passed away with families and close friends right by his side in the place that he would have wanted to go, and he did go, his beloved ranch, a place that brought him peace and comfort, and then a place where so many of his political allies and friends have visited him over the last several months since he left Washington, D.C. in December in order to come here to Arizona to seek medical treatment for the brain cancer full time. You know, a lot of people asked, why did he continue to serve when he knew he had this deadly form of brain cancer? And so many of the people close to him say it is because of this. When he was a POW in Vietnam for 5.5 years, he was there away from his country, and when he came back, he wanted to make use of every single day serving and giving back here to the people and places that he loved. He certainly loved this place here near Sedona at his family ranch, and would often host big gatherings, big barbecues with all of them here. We continue to wait to see what happens next here. We'll continue to monitor the situation. Back to you guys.
So thank you.
Meantime, we've got on the phone now Chris Herzog, former bodyguard for John McCain. And Chris, I would imagine you probably got to see the senator in all kinds of moods and moments behind the scenes.
Yes, sir. First of all, I happened to be on ABC 15 when I was a young soldier stationed at Fort Huachuca. We used to watch you guys all the time. I own the bodyguard group of Beverly Hills here in Beverly Hills, California, and as owner of the bodyguard group of Beverly Hills, you know, I'm the guy on the front page. We're 100% U.S. veterans, founded in 1967 by my father with help from the late actor John Wayne. And then later, with help from Senator John McCain, when he heard we were 100% U.S. veterans, our Arizona guys, he would help send them work, although he himself never wanted a bodyguard. The first time I ever was his personal bodyguard, we were actually brought out from Beverly Hills to Phoenix for Matt Salmon as he ran for governor against Gian Napolitano. And John McCain was going to be the keynote speaker at a very high-dollar Republican fundraiser. So they said, we know your father served in Vietnam same time as John McCain did, and would you come and be his personal bodyguard and have your other guys protect Matt Salmon at the event? And I was like, great. Unfortunately, my dad passed away a few days earlier. He was passed away at the VA hospital there, and I was pretty upset, but I still showed up for work. And then the guys went, and Senator McCain got there, arrived with no bodyguard as usual. He never wanted a bodyguard. It was only the events he would go to would assign or hire people to protect him. He told me a couple times He said all the veterans and all the soldiers and sailors in combat, they don't have a bodyguard, so I don't need a bodyguard. And he said repeatedly to me that his love to this country and for his veterans specifically was at such a level he never even thought of, I need a bodyguard. A couple things that have never been reported on. I'll give you this as an exclusive, and your listeners and your viewers can Google this. Senator John McCain was the first candidate for president in modern times who refused all Secret Service protection during both his 2000 campaign, where he ran for the nomination against President Bush, and again the 2008 campaign where he ran with Sarah Palin against Barack Obama. Both of those times, and I witnessed this firsthand because I was at many of these Republican fundraisers events running the security or as a personal bodyguard to him or other high-profile people at the event. I saw him do this. He refused all Secret Service protection until the very end of the campaign when his wife, Cindy, just made him accept the protection. My greatest, I'll say this quickly, story about me and Senator John McCain was the first time I'd ever protected him. I'd never met him before. Now, we'd been at events where he'd walk by us and said, thanks for your service and stuff, because people would pick us out, being the bodyguard group of Beverly Hills that have had all 5 national networks and multiple stories on us. People know who we are. So he'd say, hi, thanks for your service. I'd never even spoken to him, really. And he walked up to me at the event as they were announcing him on stage. And this was, again, Matt Stammon running for governor. He was the keynote speaker for a major Republican fundraiser. And someone mentioned to him, Chris's father was in Vietnam with you, and he just died a couple days ago at the VA hospital. And he turned around, walked back out of the event into the hallway, and he said, hey, come here, I want to talk to you, to which I said, oh, no, I thought I was in trouble. And he said, did your father just die? And I said, yes, Senator, he did a couple days ago at the VA hospital. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about your father and the importance of his service to the United States of America. Now, Cindy McCain was there with me with her arm in a cast from all the hands she'd been shaking with her husband. And they both put their arms on me, and he shut down the entire Republican fundraiser for about 25 minutes just to talk to me about my father's service to this country.
Chris, thanks so much for sharing that story. We've got to interrupt just for a moment here and go out to Melissa Blasius, who's at the McCain Ranch.
Hi, Steve. I'm Melissa Blasius here outside of the McCain Ranch. We've seen some movement up the hill, and it appears that the motorcade is about to come out of the McCain Ranch area. We should say that Senator John McCain passed away about 4:30 this afternoon, according to a close friend. We've heard this. And then about 6 o'clock, we saw all of these vehicles, including a hearse, come in to the McCain Ranch area. Hidden Valley is what they call the little area that he's at, which is near Cornville, near Cottonwood, near Sedona, if you're familiar at all with this area. We saw a long line of cars, more than a dozen of them. We also have DPS troopers on motorcycle ready to lead the motorcade wherever it will go. We believe as we see them come out that you will see the hearse first, followed by a number of dark SUVs, followed by other SUVs. It is a sad day here near Cornville, Arizona. A sad day for Arizona as we lose our long-term Senator John McCain, who has served us in the U.S. Congress for 35 years. And as we've talked about it before that, he served in the Navy as a pilot, shot down over Vietnam, a POW for 5.5 years. And again, here comes the motorcade now.
As we look at these live pictures, Melissa, thank you so much for keeping this shot up right here for us. His family and friends there at the ranch with him this afternoon, as Melissa mentioned, passing away at about 4:30 at that 15-acre ranch outside of Sedona.
We understand this motorcade will make a procession to the place where John McCain will lie in state in Arizona. I'm sure there will be many people who want to visit, pay their respects, and honor him in downtown Phoenix at the state capitol. This is the type of thing that we see that's a procession reserved for a statesman, somebody who has served this country, somebody who has given so much of his life. When you really look back at his career and service, it spans 60-plus years. service, which is hard to imagine. Graduated from the Naval Academy in 1958, 60 years ago, and since that time has served as everything from a naval aviator. He was a POW, obviously a congressman, senator, presidential candidate. He's been someone who has devoted his entire adult life to the service of this country, and so that is why we see this sort of honor reserved really for very few people in American society.
Yeah, it will be 5 days of honor and service, as Steve was just mentioning, lying in state here in Arizona and then at the U.S. Capitol as we watch this procession now begin. Started to see movement at the ranch there just before 4:30 and getting word that he had passed. Some of the details just coming into us from how they will honor him in these next 5 days. Of course, on heading now to the Capitol here in our state. And then day 2, his service will be here in Phoenix at the Baptist Church. He'll depart Sky Harbor, transport over to Joint Base, Air Force Base, and arrive the same day. Day 3, in honoring him, his casket will be conveyed over to the U.S. Capitol. It'll be there for an arrival ceremony where we'll see his family arrive. He will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol for 24 hours. And then on the 4th day, the motorcade will take him to the National Cathedral. It'll stop at the Vietnam Memorial as well, someplace that he visited often. It'll be followed by a service at the National Cathedral. And then on the 5th day, his motorcade will head over to the U.S. Naval Academy. A private service will be there for his family, and he'll be buried at the Naval Academy Cemetery. So an interesting timing, too, Steve, that we've mentioned in all this. His birthday would have been this Wednesday. He would have turned 82 years old.
Yeah, you know, his survival time fairly typical for somebody who faces this very devastating diagnosis of glioblastoma, a very aggressive form of brain cancer. And his family noting just yesterday that the advancement of that disease, along with McCain's age, really was ultimately what caused them to end his treatment for brain cancer. And then it was only really about a day later or so that we saw the end of his career at the age of 81. You know, John McCain, his dying message to most of us was one of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. And I looked at his speech in the last speech that he gave on the Senate floor. It says, "I hope we can again rely on humility, our need to cooperate, and our dependence on each other to learn how to trust each other again, and by doing so, better serve the people who elected us. Stop listening to the bombastic loudmouths on the radio and television and the internet. To hell with them. They don't want anything done for public good. Our incapacity is their livelihood. Let's trust each other. Let's return to regular order." It was his last message, and really the way that he spent much of his political career. For some, it was what made him so tremendously popular among his supporters. For others, it was what made him unpopular, because he had no problem going against his own party, working with Democrats, making the call based on his own conscience rather than what was necessarily the political thing to do or the expedient thing to do at the time.
Or the popular thing to do as well. We also know that his motorcade will be making its way down I-17 right now to head into the valley. So throughout the next hour or so, you should expect that along I-17. We learned of John McCain's passing at about 4:28 this afternoon, so about 2.5 hours ago, and already we're seeing the motorcade move out of Sedona and head right down I-17 to the valley. And I know, Nick, you've been tracking some of the responses that are coming in as well here to the ABC 15 newsroom. So many people reaching out.
Katie, absolutely. Only fitting for somebody who is just so monumental and leaves behind quite a legacy, not just for Arizona, but I think for the entire United States of America. I want to go ahead and pull up some of these tweets right now. This is from Andrea Mitchell, who a lot of people know as a longtime political reporter who has been doing this for decades. She says, "He was a one-of-a-kind, honest, complicated, heroic, funny, passionate person, a true patriot. So she definitely, I think, is representing all sides of Senator McCain. Also, we have statements from Dr. Kelly Ward, who, of course, is running for Senate. She says, "We are saddened to hear of the passing of Senator John McCain. His decades of service will not be forgotten." John Lewis, who is a civil rights leader and who is a member of Congress, saying Senator John McCain was a warrior for peace. He will be deeply missed by people all around the world. And if I zoom up a little bit, we have Senator Jeff Flake, of course, the junior senator from Arizona, who in so many ways looks up to Senator John McCain. And he says, "Words cannot express the sorrow I feel at John McCain's passing. The world has lost a hero and a statesman. Cindy and the McCain family have lost a loving husband and father. I have lost a wonderful friend." And I'm just going to scroll up a little bit as people continue to tweet. We read, of course, earlier the statement from Michael Bidwell, the president of the Cardinals. I posted earlier a photo of my first interview with Senator John McCain back in Yuma in 2010. And he just had such a knack for, I think, not only lighting up a room, but making you feel comfortable. He was a straight shooter, so you always knew that you were in for something when you interviewed him, but was definitely a warm person and, of course, had a big spirit. We're also getting a statement, too, I'm going to read real quick. This is from former President Jimmy Carter, and it says, "John McCain was a man of honor, a true patriot in the best sense of the word, for his heroic military service and for his steadfast integrity as a member of the United States Senate." And, of course, that was a place he would call home for 6 terms, so decades and decades of experience in the Senate and, of course, serving 4 years in the House before that. But that was just it, guys. I mean, he loved to serve. He lived to serve, and that is what he wanted everyone to remember him as, a servant to the United States and a loyal patriot, and that is definitely what his legacy is.
He had that unique ability, too, to take a personal interest in you when you went to visit him or to interview him. I had to make a promise to my grandfather years ago because my grandfather served in Washington, D.C. in Admiral McCain's office, his father's office during World War II. And my grandfather made me mention that, even though I told my grandfather saying, "John McCain will not care about this that much, Granddad," but I had to do so. And he actually asked me about it and really wanted to know about it. And he had that way with a lot of people, just asking people about themselves. And the story that Chris Herzog shared with us about
taking some personal time,
taking a whole event and putting it on hold for 25 minutes so he could talk to him about his father and his service to his country. It was that personal touch, I think, that really obviously helped him politically, but it also was a testament to his character and the kind of person that he was, why he was so beloved, and why so many tributes are coming in from people, even those who radically opposed him politically.
We're seeing a live picture right now I want to make note of here downtown. Actually, not a live picture, some tape that's being sent in just moments ago of the flags there at half-staff at the Arizona Capitol. So we're starting to see that across the country, and we want to check in with ABC 15's John Genovese as well, live out there at the Capitol for us. John?
Yeah, and guys, as you've said over and over, this is a man who has left a lasting impact on this state. As you said there, the flags here at the state capitol at half-mast tonight, notably the black prisoner of war flag as well. John McCain moving here to Arizona, beginning his career in the U.S. Senate back in 1986, spending decades representing this state. A little over an hour ago, Governor Doug Ducey issuing a statement. He called John McCain one American who will never be forgotten. He went on to say he was a giant, an icon, an American hero. But here at home, we were most proud to call him a fellow Arizonan. Like so many of us, he was not born here, but his spirit, service, and fierce independence shaped the state with which he became synonymous. Former Governor Jan Brewer also voicing in on this today over Twitter. She said, "Today we lost an American hero when Senator John McCain passed away. Rest in peace, my friend, a warrior who fought for his country and for his beloved state of Arizona. Our state and nation will deeply miss his courage and conviction." Obviously, many more local leaders chiming in as well. John McCain, representing us, like I said, for decades here, an icon in this state. Again, we will stay out here as that motorcade makes its way into the valley. But for now, reporting live, John Genovese, ABC 15, Arizona.
We should expect that in about an hour and a half or so. John, thank you for your reporting out there.
One of the senator's lasting legacies, as we have mentioned, is the McCain Institute. Though based in Washington, D.C., it's part of Arizona State University. It offers policy research, events, internships, and other activities focused on supporting American global leadership, humanitarian action, national security, and upholding democratic and human rights.
Last December, the Phoenix City Council approved renaming Terminal 3 over at our airport here at Sky Harbor, and it was all to honor Senator McCain. The terminal, you may have been over there recently, it's in the middle of just a huge renovation, and you will soon see the name of John S. McCain III Terminal. You'll see that posted out there. And during that naming announcement, Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton said this about our senator. Senator McCain has given so much of himself to our country, to Arizona, to Phoenix, giving something back to an American hero, a former naval aviator, and a 30-year member of the U.S. Senate is the least we can do. By the way, the renovation work should be finished by 2020, so you'll see that out there as well.
Nick Saletti, still gathering more reaction pouring in on the death of Senator John McCain. Nick?
Steve, Katie, and we are seeing that reaction and those condolences coming from all over. This first tweet I have pulled up is actually one that just came in from First Lady Melania Trump. She says, "Our thoughts, prayers, and deepest sympathy to the McCain family. Thank you, Senator McCain, for your service to the nation." And, of course, her husband, President Donald Trump, tweeting about an hour or so ago to commemorate, of course, the senator and his legacy. And also, too, I think a very fitting tribute here. This is from Larry Fitzgerald, of course, number 11 with the Cardinals. We knew that Senator McCain was a die-hard Arizona sports fan. That, of course, included the Cardinals. And he says, "Rest in peace to an American hero, statesman, servant of the people, and dear friend. Godspeed, Senator McCain. My prayers for Cindy and the beautiful McCain family." And this is here. You can see they're overlooking the Washington Monument in D.C. together there. Very, very close relationship they had. Again, we can't state enough how much of a diehard fan Senator McCain was, not just of Arizona sports, but just of this entire state. And even in his book, in his memoir he most recently released, he talks about the things he loves the most and talks a lot about the beautiful nature and scenery we have in this state. He wasn't born here, but he definitely personified everything, all the wonderful things that Arizona is and will always be. And I think all of those things we could see in Senator McCain's heart, guys.
Absolutely. What a neat picture for him to have as well.
Yeah, and just to show the number of people that McCain befriended over his lifetime, from sports figures to international figures, world leaders. I mean, if you really look over the list of awards that he's received alone, and not just military commendations, and there were several, multiple Bronze Stars, multiple Purple Hearts, but also all of the international awards that he received for his statesmanship in work, especially in Eastern Bloc countries, especially when it came to Russia and Russia's influence in some of those countries. He showed up in the middle of demonstrations in Kiev in Ukraine in the midst of the overthrow of Viktor Yanukovych, you know,
and all that was going on,
whose name is now in the news quite a bit for other reasons. But nonetheless, he was somebody who would take off for Thanksgiving without telling anybody, just to visit the troops
and be there
in combat wherever they were stationed overseas. It was more important for him to be with them often than it was to be at home.
You know what? It was so interesting to see, even on the sidelines. We were talking about Larry Fitzgerald a moment ago. You know, the players would be the celebrities, if you will, for the moments before, and then Senator John McCain would walk onto the sidelines, and we'd see him out there, and it was like this dynamic shifted, and then he was the celebrity, and they were over to him, and it was just this interesting shift physically and dynamically out there on the field, just in a matter of seconds. Fascinating to see.
Mark Brnovich, our Attorney General, is on the phone with us. Thanks for joining us, Mark, and share some of your memories of John McCain and what he means to you as a public servant.
Well, John McCain means a lot to me as a human being, and as you were just talking about, he was a champion for freedom all over the world. I was fortunate enough, actually, I was an intern for him, and he used to sometimes joke that everyone in Arizona at some point was an intern for him because he was around, and he had this amazing, coaching tree, so to speak. And I remember when I ran for Attorney General in 2014, I was running against an incumbent of my own party, wasn't a lot of people supporting me, and I called Senator McCain. He's like, "Of course, I'll do anything to help. What do you need to do? And he was just such a principled person. And I just can't, I have so many stories, but I just can't tell you how much he was respected all over the world. And I give you just one, I have a bunch of anecdotes, but one quick one. After I'd gotten elected Attorney General, we were in a restaurant together in D.C., and literally there was people like senators and other people coming over, and I think they thought I was a staffer or something, and he'd always interrupt them and say, no, this is our Attorney General, and he'd introduce me, and there'd be people wanting to take pictures with him, congressional members of Congress, wives and everything. And as we were walking out of the restaurant, I've never seen anything like this. It was like being with Mick Jagger or something, where all the restaurant rose in unison and started giving him a standing ovation, and people wanted to take selfies with him just to touch him. I mean, he was truly a legend. I mean, and sometimes I think in Arizona we took it for granted, but he was a legend not only here in Arizona but all over the world. And even when I visited, I'm a first-generation American, and I'd go visit Montenegro, and people would want to know, because he was a big supporter of freedom all over the world, and they'd want to know, how's Senator McCain doing? What's he doing? And they'd always ask about him. And I remember a few months back in December when I visited him in his office, he had the Guardian of Montenegro, a gift he had been given to by the Montenegrin government in his office. And I took a picture of that, and I sent it to people I knew in Montenegro, and they were just so proud that he was always thinking of people, elsewhere, and their fight for freedom, and their fight for, individual rights and liberty. And, and obviously I'm an Army guy. I just had a bet with him, and for the first time, I think in 13 years, the Army finally beat the Navy, and he was very kind of, he's a big Navy guy, but even the Army guys loved him because he was such a friend to the military.
Was he comfortable at all with that celebrity status? Because he always seemed to go back to the common guy in the room, the average Joe in the room, and really wanted to talk with him rather than the bigwigs.
Yeah, and I get that, and he was very much I'm going to say a man of the people, but it never got too big for him. And he was one of those guys where he based people on their character, not whatever their position was or what they could do for him. And sometimes he used salty language, and he's obviously started feuds sometimes with people, but he was a very consistently principled human being, and he was very comfortable in his own skin. And I don't know if I share the story, but I know I had met with him a few months back, and it was after the diagnosis, and things weren't going well. And he had, and I was trying to cheer him up, and he brought up this book on Arizona, and he was talking about how much he loved Arizona, and he started to get emotional. I started to get emotional. I'm getting emotional now. And I just remember him saying, he's like, don't feel sorry for me. He goes, I've had a great life. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, all the stuff that he had been through, and the attacks when he was running in 2000, and being a POW, and he's like, no. And he did this air chart, and he's like, if this was an actuary chart, he goes, I'd be right over here. And he, pointed in the air, and I said, well, what does that mean? And he's like, well, based on my age and my health, I shouldn't even be around anymore. And he goes, so every day's a gift. I've had a blessed life. Don't feel sorry for me. And he was just such an amazing human being, and I'm glad to call him a mentor. And we as Arizonans, as someone who's lived here, grew up here, we are so blessed to have him. And sometimes people took him for granted, but they shouldn't have, because he is truly a legend, not only here in Arizona but across the United States and literally all over the world. I mean, you go to places and you're on vacation or something, or talking to people, and they talk about him. Everyone knew who John McCain was. He was probably one of the most recognizable Americans in the entire world for the last 2 decades.
It's funny.
He never let it get to his head. He was always the same guy.
Absolutely. You talked about, everybody interning for him. I would say the same for everybody working on his campaign. I feel like when you studied politics in high school or in college in Arizona, it was like if you needed volunteer hours or you're going to go somewhere, it's like, go work on John's campaign.
Yeah.
The next every few years.
He was really good about fostering that next generation. Yes. And it's one thing I think, regardless of what your field you're in, if you're a leader, you want to help out the next generation. You want to prepare tomorrow's leaders today. And I think he took that obligation very, very seriously, kind of paying it forward and making sure that the right people did well. And he didn't always win, but he was a fighter. And one of the things that he used to like to say is a fight not joined is a fight not enjoyed. And so he didn't mind mixing it up with folks, but he truly transcends, like I said, politics, and he's an international legend.
Absolutely.
Nick Saletti is getting more reaction from social media right now, and Nick, one of his last, I believe his last public appearance was on The View with his daughter Meghan.
Absolutely, of course, and you mentioned it, Meghan McCain, a host on that show, and The View putting out this tweet. I'm going to pull it up for you. It says, "Tonight we lost an American hero. We send our deepest sympathies to Meghan, Cindy, and the entire McCain family. The View family honors the life and legacy of Senator John McCain, the beloved father and husband who devoted his life to serving our country." And a note about The View, of course, Meghan McCain was a guest fill-in on the show before she was made a permanent host, and that is something that Senator McCain actually pushed her to do. He encouraged his daughter to become that full-time member when she was offered that hosting position. That is something that he pushed her to do, and she referenced her father quite a bit, made that trek also from New York City to their ranch in Arizona also quite a bit, especially in the last few months, because they knew that their time was fleeting. But you see there The View and so many other people just pouring their hearts out, sending their thoughts and prayers to Cindy McCain, to Meghan McCain, the entire McCain family, and of course all the loved ones, all the friends and colleagues that the senator leaves behind.
It was such a memorable moment to see them there in The View together as well, where they shared a very real moment as a dad and a daughter.
Yeah. Just we remember that emotional hug and the way John McCain looked and the way he looked, especially when he saw his daughter getting emotional. It was quite a scene there. Melissa Blasius is near that McCain ranch where we got the word just a couple of hours ago that John McCain had passed away. Melissa?
That's right, Steve. This is a day that we all knew would eventually come, but that makes the news no less devastating to the people of Arizona and the people of this country and the world who knew and loved John McCain. He passed away here at his ranch in Hidden Valley, a place that he loved. Took his last breath here after spending months here full-time, being visited by friends and family and sports figures and political allies. They all got a chance to say goodbye to the senator, the Maverick senator of Arizona. You know, the day started here. It was fairly quiet back at the ranch. We understood that folks were just, you know, spending those last few quiet moments with the senator. There is a sign up here that showed up this morning, and it says that Senator McCain, thank you for your service. In the last few minutes, as word has spread about the senator's death, people have started to bring flowers and candles and American flags here to start a memorial we expect to grow overnight and into the next few days. We should say that in the last hour here, we did see the motorcade for Senator John McCain come out down this dirt road, including the hearse and several large SUVs with a full state police escort down as he heads to lie in state and for funeral services. It has been a sad day here. Many people here have come by in tears as they talked about the thought of losing Arizona's senator, a man who has served us in the U.S. Congress since 1983. We even had a guy roll down his window as we were driving through town and yell out to us that all he could think about was Senator McCain today. So he leaves some huge shoes. And we don't know who may fill them at this point, but definitely a legacy here for our state and our country. Steve and Katie?
If you think about the two people who have occupied that Senate office for the last 50 years, their names are Barry Goldwater and John McCain, so two towering figures in Arizona history. I want to leave you with one quote here that comes from John McCain himself. "My service here is the most important job I have had in my life, and I am so grateful to the people of Arizona for the privilege, for the honor of serving here, and the opportunities it gives me to play a small role in the history of the country I love."
We want to let you know that there will be even more on John McCain's life and legacy ahead tonight on a special 2020 that's happening at 9 p.m. We'll have even more from around the valley and our state here in Arizona when we rejoin you tonight at 10. Arizona Senator John McCain passing away at the age of 81. His family and his dear friends in our thoughts tonight.
ABC 15.